Nobody at Walter Reed Medical Center expected the president to show up at 3 a.m. without any cameras or press corps. What happened during those 4 hours would become the most classified story in military history, not because it was secret, but because it was too personal to share. Asterisk Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez was having the worst night of his life. The explosion in Afghanistan had taken his left leg below the knee, shattered 3 ribs, and left him with burns across 30% of his body. But the physical pain wasn't the worst part. The worst part was knowing that 3 of his squad members hadn't made it home. It was 3:17 a.m. at Walter Reed Medical Center, and Mike couldn't sleep again. The nightmares came every time he closed his eyes. The sound of the IED, the screams of his men, the feeling of helplessness as he watched his brothers fall. He was staring at the ceiling, fighting back tears, when he heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, confident footsteps that didn't belong to the usual night shift nurses. Mike turned toward the door, expecting to see a doctor making rounds, but instead, Donald Trump walked into his room. No Secret Service, no entourage, no photographers, just the President of the United States in a simple dark suit, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Evening. Sergeant, Trump said quietly, setting 1 coffee cup on the bedside table. Mind if I sit? Mike stared, speechless. Mr. President? What are you? How did you? I couldn't sleep either, Trump said, pulling up a chair. Figured maybe we could keep each other company. Sir, I don't understand. Where's your security detail? Trump smiled slightly. I told them to wait. In the parking lot. Sometimes you need to have conversations without an audience. Mike struggled to sit up straighter, wincing from the pain. Sir, you don't need to. Rodriguez. Right. Mike Rodriguez from El Paso, Texas. 3 tours in Afghanistan. Bronze Star recipient. Squad leader who saved for men during a Taliban ambush last year. Mike's eyes widened. How do you know all that? Because I read every single casualty report that comes across my desk. Every single one. And yours. Trump paused, his voice softening. Yours kept me awake tonight. They sat in silence for a moment. Mike didn't know what to say. Presidents didn't just show up in hospital rooms at 3 a.m. This had to be some kind of official visit he'd forgotten about. Mike, Trump said, using his first name, tell me about your squad. Sir, the men you lost. Tell me about them. Mike's throat tightened. Nobody had asked him that question. The doctors wanted to know about his pain levels. The psychiatrists wanted to know about his trauma symptoms. The physical therapists wanted to know about his mobility goals. But nobody had asked him about his brothers. There was Johnson, Mike began slowly. Private First Class David Johnson. Kid from Minnesota who was scared of spiders, but volunteered for every dangerous mission. He was saving money to buy his mom a house. Trump leaned forward, listening intently, and Torres. Corporal Miguel Torres. Funniest guy I ever met. He could make the whole squad laugh even when we were stuck in 120-degree heat eating MREs. He had twin daughters back home, just turned 5. Mike's voice cracked. And Sergeant Peterson, my right-hand man. Been in the service 15 years. He was supposed to rotate home next month to marry his girlfriend. Trump was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something Mike never expected. Tell me more. For the next hour, Mike talked. He told Trump about Johnson's terrible jokes and his fear of dessert scorpions. He described Torres's impression of their commanding officer and his plans to coach Little League Baseball when he got home. He shared stories about Peterson's leadership and his habit of writing poetry in his spare time. Trump didn't interrupt. He didn't offer platitudes or political talking points. He just listened with the focus of someone who genuinely cared about every word. They sound like extraordinary men, Trump said finally. Men who made the ultimate sacrifice for something bigger than themselves. Yes, sir. But I should have protected them. I should have seen that IED. I should have stopped, Trump said. Firmly but gently. Mike, can I tell you something? Yes, sir. I've never served in combat. I've never had to make the split-second decisions you make every day over there. But I've talked to hundreds of soldiers, and you know what I've learned. Mike shook his head. The good leaders, the ones who truly care about their men, they all carry this burden. They all think they could have done more, should have seen. More should have prevented the losses. Trump leaned closer. But that guilt you're carrying? That's not justice for your fallen brothers. That's not what they would want for you. How can you know that? Because you just spent an hour telling me about their character. And men of that character don't sacrifice themselves. So their leader can spend the rest of his life drowning in guilt. They sacrifice themselves so their leader can live with purpose. Asterisk Mike felt tears he'd been holding back for weeks finally start to fall. I don't know how to live with purpose anymore, sir. I don't even know how to walk. Trump was quiet for a moment, then said, Mike, what's the hardest part of your recovery? The prosthetic training, learning to walk again. It's humiliating. When's your next session? Tomorrow at 0800. Mind if I join you? Mike stared. Sir, I'd like to be there. If you don't mind the company, Mr. President, you don't need to, Mike. Let me tell you something about leadership. Real leadership isn't about grand gestures or photo opportunities. It's about showing up when someone needs you to show up. The next morning, at exactly 0800, Donald Trump walked into the physical therapy wing of Walter Reed. He had dismissed his usual morning briefings, rescheduled to meetings with foreign dignitaries, and told his chief of staff that he was unavailable until further notice. Mike was already there, struggling with the parallel bars that would help him learn to walk. With his new prosthetic, the physical therapist, Captain Sarah Chen, nearly dropped her clipboard when she saw the president. Good morning, Mike, Trump said, as if showing up to physical therapy sessions was perfectly normal presidential behavior. Ready to work for. The next 2 hours, Trump stayed. He didn't just observe, he encouraged. When Mike fell during a particularly difficult exercise, Trump was the first to offer his hand to help him up. When Mike wanted to quit, Trump reminded him about Torz's daughters and Johnson's mother and Peterson's fiancé. They're counting on you to succeed, Trump said during one of Mike's rest breaks. Not because you owe them something, but because your success honors their sacrifice. By the end of the session, Mike had walked 15 feet unassisted, his best performance since beginning therapy. Outstanding! Work, Sergeant, Captain Chen said as they finished. Whatever you did differently today, keep doing it. Mike looked at Trump, who was quietly packing up to leave. Mr. President, Mike called out, Will you come back if you want me to? Yes, sir, I do. Asterisk Trump came back. Not every day the demands of the presidency made that impossible, but regularly enough that the staff at Walter Reed began to expect his unannounced appearances, always without cameras, always without fanfare, always focused entirely on Mike's progress. During these visits, they talked about more than just physical therapy. Trump asked about Mike's plans for the future, his family, his dreams beyond the military. Mike in turn, found himself opening up in ways he never had with the professional counselors. I used to want to be a teacher, Mike admitted during one session. Before I enlisted, I was studying education. What would you teach? History. American history. I wanted kids to understand what freedom really costs. Trump was quiet for a moment. Mike, what's stopping you from still doing that? Sir, look at me. I'm broken. I can barely walk. Who's going to want a disabled veteran teaching their kids? Asterisk a school district that understands that true American history can only be taught by someone who's actually lived it. Trump replied without hesitation. A school that recognizes that students need to see what real courage and resilience look like. 6 months later, Mike Rodriguez walked across the stage at his college graduation ceremony. He had completed his degree in education through a combination of online courses and on-campus classes, funded by a scholarship program Trump had quietly established for wounded veterans. Pursuing teaching careers, Trump was there in the audience, sitting in the back row without any official recognition or media presence. When Mike's name was called, the president stood and applauded louder than anyone. After the ceremony, they met outside the auditorium. "Congratulations, Mike," Trump said, shaking his hand. "Johnson, Torres, and Peterson would be incredibly proud. Thank you, sir, for everything. For showing up when I needed someone to show up." Trump smiled. "That's what leaders do for each other, Mike. And you're a leader, don't ever forget that." "I have something for you," Mike said, pulling out a small wrapped package. Inside was a photograph of Mike's squad taken 2 weeks before the explosion. Johnson was making his signature goofy face. Torres had his arms around 2 of his squad mates. And Peterson was reading a book in the background. "I wanted you to see them," Mike said. "To know the men whose sacrifice you honored by believing in me." Trump looked at the photograph for a long moment, then looked back at Mike. "Thank you. This means more to me than any presidential portrait ever could." "Sir, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you really come that night?" "The real reason." Trump considered the question carefully. "Because I realized that being president isn't about the big decisions or the history books. It's about the individual moments when you can make a difference in one person's life, and sometimes the most presidential thing you can do is show up at 3 a.m. with a cup of coffee and just listen." Mike nodded, understanding. "Well, for what it's worth, sir, you saved my life that night." "No, Mike, you saved your own life. I just reminded you that it was worth saving." As Trump walked away, Mike called out one last time, "Mr. President." Trump turned back. "Thank you for seeing them, Johnson, Torres, and Peterson. Thank you for making sure they weren't forgotten. They never will be, Mike. Not as long as you're carrying their memory forward." 2 years later, Mike Rodriguez was teaching American history at a high school in El Paso, Texas. On his desk, he kept the photograph of his squad and a handwritten note from the president that simply read, "Leadership is about showing up. Keep showing up for your students the way your brothers showed up for you." And every day, when Mike told his students about the cost of freedom, they listened with the attention that only comes from learning history from someone who lived it. Because sometimes the most important lessons aren't found in textbooks, they're found in the stories of those who served, and in the leaders who take the time to honor their sacrifice. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories from the president, my friend.